Now, moving forward with our discussion, we want to look at examples of al-iqlab. And of course, we've said times without number that iqlab has to do with changing Nuun Saakinah to something else, of course, a subtle meme, when it comes in contact with ba. So now I want to look at examples of Nuun Saakinah when a Nuun Saakinah comes in contact with letter of al-iqlab. Now, if I may ask, what is this letter of al-iqlab we are referring to here? Of course, we will know that that letter is letter ba. Now, moving forward, the first example we have is the statement of Allah in the glorious Quran, كَلَّا لَا يُنبَذَنَّ فِي الْحُطَمَةِ. So here we have a Nuun Saakinah in red here, and the next letter that follows is a letter ba, as we can see here. So the question that arises is letter ba a letter of idhar? No, so we can't observe idhar here. So is letter ba part of yarmuluna in idgham? No, so that means we cannot observe idgham. Now the next thing that we are left with is al-iqlab. So al-iqlab is done how? Of course, we said in 3 steps. The first step is changing this noon to a letter meme, and actually you would see this even in the Quran, that instead of writing this sukun, a letter meme is written. A small letter meme is written on top of the noon in this scenario, right? So when you see this, what they are trying to remind you of is that this noon has been changed to a meme. That's the first step. The second step is to make the meme subtle, and I remind myself of this subtle nature of the meme by saying, since the meme is small, it means you pronounce it in a small way, in a subtle manner, not in the full way. So convert the noon to meme, make sure the meme is subtle by not closing the lips too tight, leaving space for little air to flow. Then the third thing is you observe gunna while doing this process. So now we could have said la yunbadhanna by doing the idhar of the gun of the noon, but that's wrong. So we could have also said la yunbadhanna by pronouncing a complete meme, but that's wrong as well. Rather, we are going to pronounce this meme in a subtle manner while still observing gunna. So that leaves us with la yunbadhanna, la yunbadhanna, la yunbadhanna, la yunbadhanna. So that's how we pronounce it. And when we read this whole verse, it goes كَلَّا لَا يُنبَذَنَّ فِي الْحُطَمَةِ. And this is done without closely locking the lips. When I say la yun, what I am doing, if you can see me, is I am leaving some little space between the two lips. So that makes me to make the meme that I've changed the noon into to be subtle. Now moving forward with other examples, here we have a Nuun Saakinah here and we have a ba. The idhar of this Nuun Saakinah cannot be done because letter that comes after it is not letter of idhar. The idgham cannot be done because of the distinct point of articulation or the different points of articulation. But what we do is we change this Nuun Saakinah into a small meme, a subtle meme, and while doing so we observe gunna. And what subtle meme means, if you've not forgotten, is that there's a little space that is hardly even seen or noticed, but we can tell because we can feel the air flowing through in our lips, right? In between our lips. So instead of saying min bad, that's wrong because we cannot do it hard. Instead of saying mim bad, pronouncing the meme completely, we don't also do that. But so that what we do is we pronounce a subtle meme. And we do not do it again by saying me bad, by entering the noon into the ba. No, that's not allowed, right? Because they are from different points of articulations. And what we do, as I've said, is we change the Nuun Saakinah into a subtle meme while still observing gunna. So we say إلا من بعد ما جاءتهم. Again we say إلا من بعد ما جاءتهم البينة. And that's how we recite it. من بعد. The next one we have is وأما من بخل واستغنى. You notice the gunna. When I reached the noon, I had to observe gunna. Even though this is not a ram bi gunna, but I have to observe gunna because what we are doing is we've changed the noon into the meme, and the meme has to be made subtle, and we observe gunna. Those are the 3 steps to observing iqlab. So again I say wa amma man bakhila wastaghna, wa amma man bakhila wastaghna. So that's that. And we move forward. We have فَدَمْدَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّهُمْ بِذَنبِهِمْ فَدَمْدَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبُّهُمْ بِذَنبِهِمْ فَسَوَّاهَا. So like that. The Nuun Saakinah, of course, as we can see, is coming in contact with letter ba, and for that reason, we have to observe what's called al-iqlab in those 3 steps we've mentioned. And when you do this often, those 3 steps happen automatically. Next example is إِذٍ بَعَثَ أَشْقَاهَا. إِذٍ بَعَثَ أَشْقَاهَا. So we can see the Nuun Saakinah coming in contact with letter ba. And the last example we have here is يَخْرُجُ مِن بَيْنِ الصُّلْبِ وَالتَّرَائِبِ. يَخْرُجُ مِن بَيْنِ الصُّلْبِ وَالتَّرَائِبِ. Like that. So min bayni, and that's how we actually do this. Min bayni, without observing idhar or even idgham here, and also reminding ourselves that this nun has to be changed to a subtle mim. And when you recite the Quran, you do not actually see the sukun here. When you see the Quran, what you see is, instead of this sukun, you see a subtle or a small mim being placed on top of that Nuun Saakinah. As a reminder, or as a way of reminding you that this is iqlab and this is how you should pronounce it. So if we notice, this and this are all examples of having iqlab all in one word, meaning the Nuun Saakinah and the letter ba come in the same word, right? Why? If we look at the other 3 examples, this one here, this one here, this one, and this one as well, we notice these 2 and this, we notice that these are examples of having iqlab with Nuun Saakinah in 2 different words, right? Meaning the Nuun Saakinah appears in one word and the ba appears in another word. And of course, these are examples of just Nuun Saakinah. Does this mean that iqlab does not occur with Tanween? No. Rather, in the next slide, we'll look at examples of iqlab occurring with Tanween, meaning Tanween comes in contact with letter ba. Now let's look at examples where Tanween come in contact with letter ba to give us the ruling of al-iqlab. So we say amthilatu iqlab Tanweeni Al-Andaleeb. So what that means is examples of when Tanween actually comes in contact with the letter of iqlab, which is letter ba, of course. So we have an example that says Kalla la illam yantahi lanasfa'an bin nasiyah. So if you look at this, it's important for us to actually remember that there's a Nuun Saakinah here. And when we look at the next letter, that's letter lam. And if you remember, lam is a letter of what? Not idhar, of course, but it's a letter of al-idgham. Now, if we enter the Nuun into the lam, that gives us al-idgham. And what kind of idgham is this? Al-idgham bighayri gunna. That's why I recited la illam as if the Nuun was not there. So la illam. So kalla la illam yantahi. Now there's another Nuun Saakinah here, yantahi. But the next letter is letter ta, and letter ta does not fall into any of the letters that we've learned. Not in letters of idhar, not in idgham, and of course, definitely not in al-iqlab. But here we have Tanween, and Tanween has a Nuun Saakinah in it, if you've not forgotten. So whenever we see Tanween and we know that a Tanween has Nuun Saakinah in it, we have to be wary of the letter that comes after it. And in this case, it's a letter ba, and of course, this scenario is a perfect recipe for al-iqlab. So we have la nasfa'an bin nasiyah, la nasfa'an bin nasiyah. So that's it for us. We have the nasfa'an bin nasiyah. Nothing is changing here. Rather, we observe the same procedures, or we follow the same procedures and steps that we followed when we had the Nuun Saakinah coming in contact with letter ba. What you would see, of course, in the Quran is that this Tanween will be written in such a way that it has that subtle meme, that small meme we talked about. When we get to the slide, we'll talk about Tanween. The way that the Tanween of iqlab is being written in the Quran, we'll actually see that. In all cases, places, the meme is usually written in that way, especially if you're using the modern Masahif, which is the modern copies of the Quran we have with us today. You're going to see this day, and that's just a reminder for you that you're changing the Nuun Saakinah either by itself or the one present in the Tanween into a subtle meme while still observing Gunna, and that's what you call Al-Iqlab. So, لَنَسْفَعًا بِالنَّاصِيَةِ. Another example we have is وَجِيءَ يَوْمَئِذٍ بِجَهَنَّمَ بِجَهَنَّمَ. Let's not forget the fact that you have to leave a little bit of space in between your two lips. So the next example we have is وَأَنْتَ حِلٌّ بِهَذَا الْبَلَدِ. حِلٌّ. We can see the Tanween here, and the next thing is letter ba, but we have to observe Al-Iqlab. One may ask that why are the examples I am bringing not having the meme I said they have when you have the Quran? That's because I typed this on my computer, and there's no way to actually make those kind of diacritical signs on the computer exactly when you're typing, because when you write outside the Quran, for instance, you do not normally use them. They only improvise ways of showing you or reminding you of your iqlab in the Quran. But one good thing about learning this way is you get to know them with or without those aids. So if you learn by knowing them with or without those aids, you can tell it makes no difference to you. But if you learn by just simply knowing the aids, the problem with that is you may not be able to identify them if those aids are not there. So moving on, we have Kiramin Barara. Kiramin Barara. So we have Kasratan, of course, here, and the Tanween there coming in contact with letter ba shows us that this is an iqlab. The next example we have is Fabi ayyi hadithin ba'dahu yu'minun. Fabi ayyi hadithin ba'dahu yu'minun. And that's how we get to know al-iqlab. We have another example that says Kulu washrabu hani'an bima kuntum ta'malun. And that's how we observe them. You get to practice more and explore when you recite the Quran. I can assure you that these are a lot in the glorious Quran. You just have to recite the Quran more often, and when you recite, whenever you say Tanween or Nuun Saakinah, take a pause and reflect over the letter that comes after it, and try to remember what letter is this. Is this letter of Izhar? Is it Idgham? Or is it Iqlab that we've just learned? And after identifying what it is, then try to recall again, what does it mean that it's a letter of Izhar or Iqlab or Idgham? And why do Arabs even do the Idgham, Izhar or Iqlab? Hopefully these are ways that Muslims can build connection with the glorious Quran. It kind of helps you to also reflect over the Quran, and you build your connection. You get to understand the Quran even better from this perspective. So we ask Allah to make it easy upon us and to reward us for every letter that we serve from the glorious Quran. So moving forward, I would like us to look at the Tanween of Al-Iqlab. How do we identify Al-Iqlab? How do we identify the fact that this Tanween is a Tanween of Iqlab, even without remembering the letter of Al-Iqlab? That's if that is ever going to happen. Of course, we know that we have Fathatan, Kasratan, and Dhammatan. But you remember I said when I was presenting that the Tanween of Iqlab is different in the sense that the subtle meaning we talked about is added to the Tanween by way of showing you or reminding you that there's an Iqlab here so that you observe it. So for instance, in Fathatan, we know Fathatan is usually written with double Fatha, but the same way we have the Tanween of Izhar being special and the Tanween of Idgham being special, the Fathatan, Kasratan, and Dhammatan, we also have a special way of writing the Tanween of Iqlab, or at least that's how it has been written in the Quran, in the copies of the Quran we have with us today, in order to help us, right? So for Fathatan, instead of writing the double Fatha, we have a Fathatan here, and because the letter that comes after is a letter Ba, so you see this meme, the subtle meme here I was talking about. So you see Lanas Fa'an. So it's a reminder and a way to help you pronounce or visualize pronouncing the subtle meme we talked about. So Lanas Fa'an bin Nasiyah. So the same thing is applicable to your Kasratan. You have Fabi ayyi hadithin ba'dahu yu'minun. You can see that here, instead of having a double kasra, what you have is a mim in place of one of the kasra, just as a way of reminding you that here is an iqlab because of the ba that comes after it. Then for dhammatan as well, instead of having a double dhamma, you have a mim in place of the second dhamma, right? And this is so because we have a letter ba coming after it. So these are the ways that the publishers of the Masahif, the copies of the Quran we have with us today, have tried to help us visualize reciting and learning the Quran. So I hope this makes things easy for us. But as I've said earlier, that this is not just peculiar to the Tanween. Now we have this now, Nuun Saakinah as well, and I would like us to also look at it. So we say, Nuun Saakinah to fil iqlab. How is the Nuun Saakinah being written whenever we have this situation for iqlab? So the first one is when we have it in two different words, and the second line is when you have it in one word. So here we have idhin ba'atha. We have a Nuun Saakinah here. And instead of writing a sukun on top of it, a meme, the subtle meme is written here. Because you remember that what we've done is we've changed the Nuun Saakinah into a subtle meme because it comes in contact with ba. So you say idhin ba'atha, and that is al-iqlab for you in one word, right? The next example we have in one word is kalla la yunba. You can see the noon here without sukun, but so that we have a small meme being written on top of the noon simply because it comes in contact with the letter ba. And that's to show us how the iqlab is being performed, or to remind us of how the iqlab is being performed. Another example we have is bidhan bihim. You can see Nuun Saakinah, but instead of the sukun, we could see the meme and then a ba. That's iqlab. Another example we have here is man bakhila wa amma man bakhila wastaghna. Right? You can see Nuun Saakinah, and this is a way of writing ba. This is a ba, just that the dot is written somewhere here. So that's a ba, but the Nuun Saakinah precedes it, and instead of writing sukun on top of it, what we then have is a small meme to visualize or to represent the iqlab. So all of these, as I've said, are ways to help us as reciters of the Quran, and to remind us, to help us engage more with the Quran. When you recite the Quran, you see some signs and you begin to wonder, what are these signs for? When you go to the last page of the Quran, for instance, the publishers and the printers of this Quran, or of this Masahif we have, they actually have explained those aids that they've placed in it to help us recite the Quran better, to become better reciters of the glorious Quran. So the journey of becoming better reciters and having better reciters out there of the glorious Quran is not just a one-way thing. The way I'm here teaching you how to recite the Quran, even the printers and the publishers of this Masahif are also being intentional about how to help learners, beginners like you and I, because I'm still a beginner, I'm still a learner, of course, as regards how to recite the Quran. So we ask Allah to make we ask Allah to make the recitation of the glorious Quran easy for us, and we ask Him to reward us, or not to deny us of an atom of the reward of reading even a vowel or a letter from the glorious Quran. So with this, we come to the end of discussion. We come to the end of our discussion as regards al-iqlab, and our next class we'll be looking at the fourth ruling, which is al-ikhfa'u. And if you've not forgotten that al-ikhfa simply means concealment. So that means, when do we conceal the Nuun Saakinah or the Tanween? And I want us to actually, before we wrap up this class, I would like us to kind of reflect that we have 28 alphabets in the Arabic language. We've taken 6 out of these 28 alphabets for Idhar. We've taken another 6 for Al-Idgham. Now we've taken how many for Iqlab? 1. So that gives us a total of what? And how many are left for this out of these 28 alphabets? How many are left on these 28 alphabets? And I would like us to actually think about that and kind of mentally prepare ourselves and I would like us to reflect over that and use it to mentally prepare ourselves for the next ruling. Meaning, by so doing, you will have already known the letters of the next ruling, which is al-ikhfa, and you can start looking for examples for yourselves now. So it means whenever a Nuun Saakinah whenever a Nuun Saakinah comes in contact with a letter, and letter is not a letter of Idhar, Idgham, or Iqlab, then it's a letter of the next ruling. And with this, we say Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.